Picture this. You reach for the light switch in your bedroom. Click. Nothing. You flip it again, harder this time, like that's somehow going to make a difference. Still pitch black. Your first thought? Probably just a circuit breaker issue, or maybe you forgot to pay the electric bill. But then you walk over to the window and what you see makes your stomach drop. The entire street is swallowed in darkness. Not a single porch light flickering. No glow from your neighbor's living room. The traffic signals at the corner? Dead. And that constant amber haze from downtown that's been painted across the night sky for years? Gone. Completely erased. That's when the reality slams into you like a freight train. This isn't a local problem. This is everyone, everywhere. Today, I'm going to show you something that sounds like a Netflix thriller, but is actually based on hard data from government agencies and disaster preparedness specialists. We're talking about what would actually go down if the entire electrical infrastructure across this country just stopped working. Not a temporary outage that gets fixed by morning. We're talking permanent lights out. Everything I'm sharing comes from real analysis of past catastrophic blackouts, including that massive 2003 incident that left 50 million people stumbling around in the dark. But here's the terrifying part. Imagine if the power never flickered back to life. Within just 72 hours of losing electricity nationwide, you'd watch society as we know it crumble faster than any war or earthquake could ever accomplish. And the crazy part? It's not even about the lack of power itself. It's about what happens to people when every single thing they've relied on for their entire lives suddenly evaporates. I'm breaking down the timeline for you, hour by hour, showing you exactly how 330 million people would be forced back into living conditions that haven't existed since before the Civil War. The first moments, when reality hits. Let's start at 6:17 p.m. on an ordinary Tuesday. The grid doesn't slowly wind down like a dying battery. It crashes instantly, catastrophically, like someone just pulled the plug on the entire nation at once. Your phone was charging a second ago. Now it's a useless brick. You grab it anyway, muscle memory taking over. 0 bars, no Wi-Fi signal, nothing. The cell towers? They've got backup batteries, sure, but those are draining fast without the grid feeding them power. You think maybe the landline still works? Nope. Those old-school phone systems need electricity too, and their emergency backups were designed for brief hiccups, not the apocalypse. Outside your window, cars are rolling to a stop in the middle of the street. Modern vehicles are basically computers on wheels, and when that electromagnetic shockwave from the grid collapse fried every circuit board in the country, your car became a very expensive paperweight. The communication blackout. 30 minutes in, and America has basically been chopped up into thousands of isolated islands. No texts, no emails, no phone calls, no social media to check what's trending or if anyone else is experiencing this nightmare. A few people with hand-crank radios might pick up some distant station still broadcasting, but mostly what you're hearing is that eerie automated voice. This is the emergency broadcast system. Stay calm, remain indoors, await instructions. Except those instructions never come because the people who would be giving them are just as cut off as you are. Hour 1. Confusion turns to concern. People start trickling out onto their porches and lawns. You see faces you've passed 1,000 times but never actually spoken to. Now everyone's talking, trying to crowdsource answers. Someone mentions they heard weird sounds earlier, like distant explosions. Another person says their brother works at the power plant and hasn't come home. A few brave souls try starting their cars to drive across town and check on elderly parents. Most vehicles won't even turn over. The handful that do start, those become more valuable than gold within hours. Think about it. Gas stations can't pump fuel without electricity. ATMs are just metal boxes now. Your credit card is completely worthless because nothing can process the transaction. Cash is king, but who carries actual cash anymore? Hour 3. The panic shopping begins. People with working cars or just their own 2 feet start heading toward grocery stores and pharmacies. Most places are locked up tight, their fancy electronic security systems frozen. The few stores that manage to get their doors open, They're only taking physical money, and you'd be shocked how few people have more than $20 in their wallet. Supermarkets turn into pressure cookers. The managers know that without refrigeration, everything perishable is going to rot within hours. Some try to sell it all cheap just to get something for it. Others give up and walk away. And then people start helping themselves. Not full-on rioting yet, but you see families with kids loading up shopping carts with whatever they can grab. Store employees try calling the cops, but, oh right, phones don't work. And even if they could call, the police dispatch systems are down too. Hour 6. When night falls. This is when things get really unsettling. The sun sets, and you realize just how much we've insulated ourselves from actual darkness. No streetlights, no glow from office buildings, no headlights cutting through the night. It's darker than you've ever experienced in a city. Medieval-level darkness. And the temperature? It's shifting fast. If you're in Minnesota in January, your house is already getting uncomfortably cold without the furnace running. If you're in Arizona in July, the heat is becoming dangerous without a sea. Hospitals fire up their emergency generators. But here's the gut punch. Most hospitals only stockpile enough diesel fuel for maybe 3 days. After that, people on ventilators, dialysis patients, anyone whose life depends on electricity-powered equipment, they're on borrowed time. Quick question for you all watching. If you had access to any store right now but no power, what's the first thing you'd grab? Food? Water? Something else? Drop your answer in the comments. Hour 12. The water stops flowing. Here's something most people don't think about. Water doesn't just magically flow from your tap. It requires massive electric pumps to maintain pressure in the pipes. Treatment plants that clean your water, they need electricity too. 12 hours in, water pressure starts dropping in most cities. Some areas lose water completely. Smart people are filling every container they can find. Bathtubs, pots, empty milk jugs. But tons of people don't think about it until they turn on the faucet and nothing comes out. And here's the nightmare scenario. Without water pressure, toilets don't flush. Sewage systems start backing up. The basic sanitation that keeps us from living in our own filth? It's breaking down on day 1, hour 24. Society starts reorganizing 1 full day after the lights went out, and already the world has transformed. Money as we know it is basically worthless. Can't swipe a card, can't make a digital transfer. Most people don't have enough physical cash to matter. So what takes its place? Good old-fashioned bartering. That can of beans you thought was worthless? Someone will trade you batteries for it. Got medical knowledge? People will give you food for treating their sick kid. The police, if they can even function, aren't responding to break-ins or theft anymore. They're trying to protect hospitals and government buildings from complete chaos. The social contract we all implicitly agreed to, you know, the one that keeps us from just taking what we want, is showing serious cracks. We're 36. When desperation breeds violence. The first real violence erupts. Parents watching their kids go hungry start making hard choices. Some families band together, pooling resources and protecting each other. Others decide hoarding is the only survival strategy. Home invasions start happening. At first, people target empty houses, places where the owners clearly evacuated. But as food runs lower, occupied homes become fair game. Elderly people living alone, single moms, anyone who looks vulnerable, they're at serious risk. You start seeing neighborhood protection groups forming. Some are genuinely good people trying to keep everyone safe. Others are just gangs with a fancy name, taking what they want from anyone weaker. Hour 72. The new dark age. 3 days. That's all it took. 72 hours after the grid collapsed, and American civilization as we knew it has essentially ended. Not because of bombs or hurricanes, but because we built everything on a foundation of electricity and never considered what happens when it disappears. The death count from these first 3 days, experts estimate hundreds of thousands. Not from the blackout itself, but from everything that follows. Medical emergencies with no treatment available, accidents in total darkness, dehydration, people dying from heat or cold, violence over resources. But this is just the beginning of the nightmare. Without power, the entire food production and distribution system collapses. Water treatment stops. Modern medicine becomes impossible. Communication and transportation technology drops back to the 1800s. Government projections are absolutely chilling. They estimate 90% of Americans would die within the first year. Not from the immediate collapse, but from starvation as food supplies run out. From diseases we thought we'd conquered as sanitation fails. From exposure to the elements. And from violence as society completely unravels. The survivors? They'd be the people who adapted fastest to a pre-industrial reality, growing food, making tools, defending their communities with force, living without every modern convenience that defines our lives. Kids born after this would grow up in a world that looks more like the 1800s than the 2020s. They'd have to learn skills their great-grandparents knew, but their parents completely forgot. And here's the thing that should terrify you. This isn't some far-fetched movie plot. The electrical grid is shockingly fragile. A sophisticated cyber attack, a powerful solar storm, an electromagnetic pulse weapon. Any of these could trigger exactly this kind of cascading failure. The power companies know it, the government knows it, but fixing it would cost astronomical amounts of money, so we just hope it doesn't happen. We spend our whole lives assuming electricity is permanent. That flipping a switch will always light up a room. That food will always be at the supermarket. That help is always just a phone call away. But it all rests on an infrastructure that could fail instantly and might never recover. The first 72 hours after a total blackout wouldn't just change your life. They'd determine if you even have a life to change. Everything you take for granted could vanish so fast you wouldn't have time to react. So here's my final question for the comments. Knowing what you know now, what's the one thing you're completely unprepared for if this actually happened? What's your biggest vulnerability? Next time your power cuts out for an hour, remember what I've shown you today. Think about how much worse it could be if those lights never came back on. Because now you understand what the first 3 days of a permanent blackout would actually look like.